Good afternoon. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Nadeau, the Chair of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and I'm calling to order this meeting of the committee to conduct a budget oversight hearing for the Office of Risk Management and the Office of Administrative Hearings over the Zoom platform. The time is 12:06 p.m. The first agency on today's agenda is the Office of Risk Management. ORM is the district agency tasked with reducing the probability, occurrence, and cost of risks to the district government. ORM carries out this work through 4 programs. The Risk, Safety, and Prevention Program ensures that all district employees work in a healthy, safe environment. ORM's insurance program reduces the exposure to risk on behalf of the district government by procuring insurance for the district and by ensuring that contractors working with the district have adequate levels of insurance in the event of harm or damage. The Tort Liability Program receives, investigates, and attempts to resolve tort claims filed by individuals against the city for property loss, damage, or personal injury. And finally, the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program works with district government employees that are injured on the job to provide lost wage benefits and appropriate medical care. The mayor's proposed FY 2024 operating budget for ORM is $4,218,908, representing a 3.1% increase from its approved FY 23 budget. This proposed budget once again includes 31 FTEs and does not include a capital budget. Perhaps unsurprisingly, ORM's proposed budget does not appear to be doing anything risky. The second agency on today's agenda is the Office of Administrative Hearings. The OAH is an independent agency that serves as an administrative court. It's tasked with providing a fair, efficient, and effective system to manage and resolve administrative litigation of district residents arising under district law. OAH is a neutral, impartial tribunal that holds hearings and decides appeals from government decisions. Its jurisdiction has expanded significantly since its creation in 2001, and now it conducts hearings and resolves agency cases involving a wide variety of district, agency, board, or commission actions. The mayor's proposed FY 24 operating budget for OAH is $11,793,127, representing a 1.7% decrease from its FY 23 approved budget. The proposed budget shows no decrease of FTEs, but instead a shift of 5 FTEs to term employees. I hope the agency feels supported to carry out its mission with a proposed budget. I look forward to hearing from our public and government witnesses today on both OAH and ORM. I would now like to provide some logistical announcements for today's hearing. This hearing is being live streamed at brianneknadeau.com/committee. In order to ensure we hear from all members of the public, I ask that all witnesses stick to their allotted time. Witnesses testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes to provide oral testimony, and all other witnesses will have 3 minutes. I'd also like to provide some detailed reminders about the Zoom platform and the committee's protocols for the witnesses participating today. All witnesses participating in this webinar are currently listed as attendees in the Zoom. That means your microphones are muted and your video cameras are turned off. When it's your turn to join a panel for testimony, I'll call your name and a member of my staff will invite you to become a panelist. If you wish to activate your video while you testify, you need to click the button in the toolbar at the top bottom of your screen that looks like a video camera, and there will be a frame that includes a clock in your time. When your time's up, I kindly ask that you conclude your remarks so we can ensure that everyone has had a chance to be heard. For any technical difficulties today, you can send a message to Sabrine Cotty or Ariel Ardura, labeled as committee staff, and they will follow up with you. Additionally, if you're having trouble gaining access to the Zoom, and you have pre-registered, you can reach my team at 202-741-2111 or by emailing publicworks@dccouncil.gov, and they'll try to resolve your issues. Now let's turn to our first and only panel of witnesses for the Office of Risk Management. All right, our first and only witness signed up for the Office of Risk Management is Teresa Wells. If there is anyone else logged in as an attendee to the Zoom that would like to testify about the Office of Risk Management, please raise your hand and my staff will add you to the panel. We'll be having another panel for OAH. Okay, Ms. Wells, when you're ready, you may begin. else, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Would you
Okay.
like to turn on your camera or no?
No, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Today, I, Teresa Wells, am providing my testimony as a district government employee receiving workers' compensation under the Office of Risk Management with the purpose of petitioning the DC Council to re-examine legislation regarding Title I workers' compensation public sector for district government employees versus private sector employees in the district. Under Title I, workers' compensation for private sector injured workers receive better compensation and benefits, while public sector for district employees receive limited benefits and compensation, resulting in 1, a lack of full coverage healthcare and recovery services in order for district employees to return to work full duty when applicable. 2, the inability to find adequate legal representation due to the standing laws for workers' compensation public sector. And 3, the mannerisms in which ORM decides to administer workers' compensation laws, its interpretations and applications. I was injured in 2013 and initially denied workers' compensation benefits. However, with appeal rights, I was awarded workers' compensation by the Office of Administrative Hearings in 2017 based on a preponderance of medical evidence, as the presiding judge stated within the order. Since then, I've had 3 surgeries, still have medical issues from a bilateral injury, and require accommodations to return to work. Unfortunately, the district agency that I work for denied providing accommodations pursuant to the workers' compensation position. Consequently, I have been placed in a 1-year vocational rehabilitation program to, quote, look for a job with minimum vocational assistance or medical consideration with my ongoing symptoms that require pain management treatment. Subsequently, I have lost my district job of record. My ongoing medical symptoms from my work-related injury and corresponding surgeries have impacted my quality of life. And potentially by October 2023, I could be unemployed with no job, no personal health care insurance, no workers' compensation benefits and/or compensation. Title I workers' compensation for injured workers has 2 statutes: public sector for district government employees and private sector employees in the district. Under Title I workers' compensation, there is a substantial disparity of benefits and compensation for the public sector. Many of us that have been injured on the job while serving district residents are suffering from our medical injuries and residual medical effects that have impacted our quality of life. Although there are too many disparities to address in this hearing, I will enumerate a few. Disparity in benefits, lack of monetary and medical benefits until suitable employment, conflict of interest, where ORM renders notice of determinations and also handles appeals at the same time. There should be an independent entity to address appeals. Selection of doctors, ORM physicians, medical notes and orders that are not followed specifically by the physicians. Notice of retention rights. There are several dates that I was given with no explanation to calculate how these dates were derived in order for me to return to work. Americans with Disability Accommodations, DCHR, Office of Disability Rights, and ORM have no involvement in providing ADA accommodations, yet workers' comp doctors may state that in their recommendations. What recourse does a district employee have to return to work when having to have ADA accommodations requirements? Notice of determinations. Unlike private sector, district employees cannot request a hearing at any given time unless the notice of determination is issued. Claims examiners and supervisory claims examiners sometimes do not respond, nor do they give explanations. And I have had to contact the director of ORM or the deputy director in order to get a response. External positions are not considered in ORM's recommendations. They only follow the panel network, which often leads to mixed diagnosis of medical issues. Treatment for the ORM workers' compensation physicians, sometimes there are additional requests for treatment and often denied. In my case, I could not get further physical therapy. That was denied. So now I'm addressing a pain management issue. Mileage reimbursement. you can only get mileage reimbursement for medical expenses. But if you're put in a vocational rehabilitation program, you have to see a counselor every week. That travel expense is not reimbursed. Medical release requirement, you have to sign a release for your health care. Your entire health history is submitted to ORM. Is that a breach of HIPAA and an invasion of medical privacy? There are several others that I've listed in my testimony. I have submitted that to the council for review. But overall, I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully these things could be addressed or re-examined or looked at to revamp this legislation for district government employees that receive workers' compensation.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. I truly appreciate your testimony today, and I look forward to reading the written testimony that you've submitted as well. Can you talk about your experience with the approved physicians that you've needed to see as part of the program?
Yes. So first of all, there's ORM. Is my understanding that ORM is supposed to give you a list of panel doctors to choose from. In my case, I was not given a list of panel doctors. The initial surgery, I was able to choose that, but then when he requested a second opinion, I didn't get a list of panel. In fact, I was given a doctor. The appointment was scheduled, and it was a misdiagnosis. I found out later that it was a misdiagnosis. He had given me a maximum medical improvement rating, which didn't correlate to the actual injury that I had. So then I received a notice to terminate my medical benefits. And in order to submit documentation, I had to go to an external doctor, submit medical documentation that showed what actual injury or residual effects I had from the injury. Workers' comp or ORM stated that, one, they don't reimburse you for out of the pocket expenses. Two, that is not a doctor under their panel of doctors, but yet they ask you for supporting medical documentation in order to consider whether they want to terminate your medical benefits or continue your benefits. So if you don't acknowledge, or if ORM doesn't acknowledge external doctors, then you're asking for supporting documentation, but on the same hand, you're saying that you don't accept outside medical documentation or recommendations. So I've had a misdiagnosis. I had surgery. It helped the issue that I had, but then I had residual effects, which now I'm petitioning ORM to get pain management therapy for that. So I don't understand if they constantly go with the list that they have, and then you go outside of that list and there's a difference in medical opinion, where does a person go to get resolution?
Good question. Definitely something that we can look into today. I know we're going to ask some questions related to your testimony as well. So I'm just looking through. I'm sorry, I have your written testimony in front of me now. I'm just looking through to see if there's anything else I want to ask you while I have you here live. But thank you. I know you've talked a lot with my staff about your experience with the program and ways that we can improve it for others as well. So I truly, truly appreciate your testimony today. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just the other thing is, which I think is important, is ADA accommodations. In my case, the doctor recommended the one that was supposed to do a second opinion, put in accommodations. My job on record denied providing those accommodations. So I was under the understanding that I could return to work by a certain date, which ORM calls the notice of retention rights. So I was under the understanding that I can return to work. I can be involved in vocational rehab to look for another job, but I thought that I can return to work on that particular date. However, because the accommodations were denied by the district agency, I couldn't return back to work. I contacted DCHR, ORM said contact DCHR, they have no involvement. I contact Office of Disability Rights. I was told to go back to my employing agency, and I didn't understand why, because they had denied the accommodations and the employing agency denied the accommodation. So who has governance over requiring district agencies to provide accommodations so that district employees can return back to work? So we lose a job because no one can provide accommodations. I just think that that's very inequitable, and it's not providing or allowing a district employee to return back to work in some kind of normalcy, or try to make them whole as much as they can for those that are able to go back to work.
Yeah, and it makes me think about something from when I was chairing the Committee on Human Services, which is the supported employment model that we have through the Department of Disability Services, and maybe there needs to be more of a connection between the agencies on that. Perhaps that would be a start. But okay. Very helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did not have anybody else raise their hand to say that they wanted to join this panel. So we are going to move to our next panel. Our first and only panel for the public witnesses wishing to testify about the Office of Administrative Hearings includes Jen Jenkins, Policy Counsel at Legal Aid of the District of Columbia, Michael Syndrome, Danielle Burr, Senior Policy Officer at the Council for Court Excellence, Fred Smallhauser, Co-Chair of the Legal Committee of DC Open Government Coalition. If there is anyone else logged in as an attendee to the Zoom that would like to testify about OAH, please raise your hand and my staff will work to add you to the panel. Jen Jenkins, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Nadeau. My name is Jen Jenkins, and I'm here as Policy Counsel with Legal Aid DC to testify on the need for OAH to receive increased funding and support from the Council to better serve district residents. The majority of the case types that OAH hears involve parties from Legal Aid's client community. DC residents who live at or under 200% of the federal poverty level and who face significant systemic barriers and often lack access to resources. As such, Legal Aid DC is very concerned about budget cuts to OAH, an administrative agency that decides on timely contested cases involving more than 40 DC agencies, boards, and commissions, and the impact on unrepresented litigants. Legal Aid has these concerns for two main reasons. First, studies show that district residents with access to assistance and full representation tend to achieve better outcomes in legal proceedings than those without representation. Unfortunately, unrepresented litigants account for a large percentage of cases handled by OAH. According to the 2019 Access to Justice report, of the over 2,000 unemployment insurance cases in FY 2017, 91% had no party represented. In public benefits appeals, 86% of the over 1,100 cases had no party represented, and 88% of the 200 student discipline cases had no party represented. Further, DC residents increasingly face service delays and lack of access from varying district agencies. Second, OAH is facing an unprecedented number of administrative appeals. As of the end of FY 2023 in the first quarter, there was 18,661 total open cases across all of the agencies within OAH's jurisdiction. DCRA / now the Department of Buildings, DOB, is an example of an agency facing an unprecedented number of appeals. Notably, DOB's website indicates that almost $107 million in fines have gone uncollected since FY19, despite OAH hearing and deciding on those DOB cases. In addition to DOB / DCRA, there are other agencies with a large number of cases before OAH, the Department of Human Services and the Department of Public Works, for example. Without a considerable financial investment in OAH, the many agencies and residents that fall within OAH's purview will not receive the services and due process to which they are entitled under the law. Legal Aid DC has several solutions and recommendations to address these concerns. First, the OAH Resource Center expansion should be prioritized and funded. An expanded resource center would help ensure that district residents do not fall through the cracks or miss out on services because they do not know where or how to file and litigate a fair hearing request. To ensure better outcomes for pro se litigants at OAH, the following recommendations should be prioritized. 1, hire a full-time permanent resource coordinator. 2, find a permanent home for the resource center and all its staff and a specific place on the OAH organizational chart. And 3, bring on additional staff to expand the types of services provided. Next, adequately funding information technology at OAH is crucial. Unfortunately, there is a decrease in funding from FY23 for IT, although we were encouraged to see it is still an increase from previous FYs since 2021. OAH and pro se litigants would benefit from increased funding in a variety of ways. First, the e-filing portal would receive much needed expansion to permit electronic filing in all case types and would get the needed and required language access improvements it needs. Second, OAH clerks could accept email filings from litigants without requiring them to complete specific forms that must be downloaded from the website. The OAH clerks are a vital point of contact for litigants who may not be able to use the e-filing portal or fill out forms. And third, the legal assistance hotline, OLAN, this is for OAH, should also be listed clearly on the OAH website so people who request fair hearings know how to get assistance and information about OLAN. Next, language access. We stress that OAH should be complying with the Language Access Act. We've noticed that OAH frequently fails to process the language access request to ensure an interpreter is at each hearing, and that OAH should also update its language on its website to inform people of current operations and clarify how they can ask for in-person or video hearings. And finally, as I mentioned earlier with the Department of Buildings, the council must ensure that agencies within OAH's jurisdiction follow through with their responsibility to collect fines and any other obligations following a decision from OAH. This would ensure there is no waste of resources on OAH's part. We believe with funding and support from the council in these areas, OAH will be better able to fulfill its mandate to DC and its residents. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Next, we'll hear from Danielle Burse.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the committee. I'm Danielle Burse, Senior Policy Counsel for the Council for Court Excellence. CCE is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to enhance justice for all in the District of Columbia. Please note that in accordance with our policy, no judicial member of CCE participated in the formulation or approval of this testimony. This testimony does not reflect the specific views of or endorsement by any judicial member of CCE. My oral testimony is an abbreviated version of the written testimony you have before you. Over the years, OAH's jurisdiction and caseloads have grown, though not always matched with additional funding. CCE developed a report on behalf of the Office of the DC Auditor, which made a variety of recommendations for the continued improvement of OAH. That report is linked in the footnotes of this testimony, and a summary is attached. Regarding online access to case records, the OAH Establishment Act requires that the office make all documents filed in any case before the office available for public review. DC FOIA adds the requirement that final orders be published on the internet. We last heard from the March 16th OAH Advisory Committee meeting that OAH has contracted with Mondrian Consulting to complete a 2-week review of all of OAH's technology systems. While this could be useful, we hope it will not cause further delay to the publication of OAH case documents on the internet, even if a more optimal approach might be identified in the future. To resolve issues with database creation, maintenance, and online publication, CCE proposes an investment of approximately $340,000 to fund 5 IT positions at OAH, approximately $150,000 to contract an outside party to review OAH salaries and complete a full benchmark study as directed by the FY23 Budget Support Act. And we wish we had more information about whether that money was swept completely from last year's budget or is still available. But either way, we think it needs to be in there for this year. Assistance for pro se litigants. Thousands of DC residents pursue OAH cases without legal assistance, as my colleague from Legal Aid said. CCE commends OAH's ongoing collaboration with the legal services community and support of the OAH Legal Assistance Network. However, these good efforts fall short of what is needed. Stakeholder conversations have made clear that the Resource Center, in addition to being understaffed, has been run by an attorney in the Office of General Counsel and an additional staffer in agency management and operational support. To resolve issues of underinvestment in the OAH Resource Center, CCE recommends 1, ensuring a baseline of approximately $110,000 every year for a full-time permanent Resource Center coordinator position, and 2, approximately $140,000 for at least 2 support staff so that the center and its phone lines are always fully staffed during business hours based on current salaries. These positions should all be in the same division to allow for proper coordination. This could be addressed through expanding the planned baseline staffing review or through revision of the OAH Establishment Act to enshrine the Resource Center as a permanent and coherent entity within OAH. In addition to a robust resource center, OAH needs clear and consistent authority, as well as predictable funding to serve pro se litigants well. In 2016, we raised the concern that OAH's reliance on MOUs for adjudication of matters from several agencies creates the impression, if not the absolute risk, that a contracting agency that disagrees with OAH's rulings or findings will terminate OAH's jurisdiction, and a perception that OAH's determinations may be influenced by that risk. Bill 22-352, the Office of Administrative Hearings Jurisdiction Expansion Act of 2017, would have addressed this issue. It had wide support and passed, but wasn't funded. To alleviate the risk that contracting agencies might terminate or threaten to terminate OAH's jurisdiction over their cases when disagreements arise, CCE recommends including language like that of that bill in the FY24 BSA, along with the appropriate reprogramming of dollars from contracting agencies to cover that fiscal impact. We also note the need for a staff member dedicated to the cost to enable that entity to spend the time necessary on timely questions of recruitment and compensation, in addition to other duties. CCE recommends allocating at least $80,000 to complete this hire. To recap, we urge this committee to support needed investments in OAH in FY24, including $110,000 for a full-time permanent Resource Center coordinator, $140,000 for at least 2 Resource Center support staff, $340,000 for IT positions, $150,000 for an outside party to conduct a full review of salaries and benchmark study, and $80,000 for a staff person at the Commission on Selection and Tenure. We also urge the committee to make needed additions to the BSA to make clear that the OAH is able to carry out these specific investments. Language in the Act which clarifies that the OAH Resource Center is an entity within OAH to which funding may be allocated and specifying when it is the council's intention could ensure more success in fiscal 24 than was achieved previously. Thank you for your consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Fritz Smallhauser.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Fritz Smallhauser. I'm co-chair of the legal committee of the DC Open Government Coalition, a community group that advocates for open access to public records, public meetings, and public data. And we're here to talk about the FY24 budget for the Office of Administrative Hearings from the point of view of users, the public that, as the previous witnesses have said, comes streaming in. The overwhelming crush of cases is really notable to the committee. They started the year with 13,000 cases from last year. They only settled 19,000 last year, so they had almost a year's worth of work in their inbox when they started this year. And this year includes a tsunami of expected new cases because the federal government's forbearance of eligibility and benefit determinations during COVID is going to go away with the end of the public health emergency. So stand by for a huge increase of their work, and the budget is essentially standstill. Do more with less is the message, and that concerns us. Workload goes up, prices rise. Increased efficiency is vital, and we're going to address a bunch of details of that in just a minute. The user wants to know, how do I file a challenge to an agency decision that I don't think was right? A ticket that a taxi driver got from a hack inspector, he thinks it was unfair. A school suspension that parents want to challenge is unfair. rent increases that are against the law, or payment mistakes in Medicaid benefits. These are vital questions to everyday citizens, and they need to know how they can come into OAH and quickly and efficiently get a decision. Who's right? And what happened with cases like theirs in the past. And if they do file, they need to keep track of their cases efficiently and get help along the way. And sadly, we're just not making progress in doing that to help them. Committee direction has been clear. You've allocated funds and given direction about how to, from your good evaluation, how to do it better. And it hasn't happened. And from the user perspective, improved services are just not happening at the needed rate. Specifically, no improvement in electronic access, no e-filing improvement, no online case information, when's my next hearing, no published final orders, no sign of the added tech staff that your committee provided to address just such problems, no improvement in the space or staff to assist the public in a resource center, no sign of progress on a staffing study to get an expert view of what personnel they need. So that's where we are at the middle of this fiscal year and looking ahead to a standstill budget. Brief notes on e-filing. They told us in November they'd have all their cases able to be filed by that method, except a few, but still only one kind on the website can come in by e-filing unemployment cases. There's no docket where someone can check their own case to find out when a hearing is. I looked at a half a dozen central panels around the country and dockets are commonplace. Why not here? Published final orders. You've heard us talk about this. Your predecessor as government operations chair said a year ago, I want to make sure, I'm quoting, we don't come back in a future hearing and people are asking us about opinion publication and we don't have a timeline. That's your predecessor. Still, they've told us from OAH, we're working with Octo, the tech agency. We're working with our vendor. There's a different source of the delays every time we talk. And now there's a new study. The chief judge said that they've got a brand new input that one of the other witnesses mentioned, and decisions on publication will come later. Well, that's pretty slow work to remedy 2 decades of unpublished opinions, violating DC law and federal regulations, and commonplace in other such agencies. The added technical staff, observers in the office say they've seen no posting, no hiring of the added tech staff you appropriated funds for to double their capability to address just these problems. And the staffing study, $200,000 appropriated and no sign of a procurement. The committee last year said, and I quote, do it in advance of the initiation of the 24 budget process so it can guide our budget decision making. And it hasn't happened. Look, the legislature writes the laws and appropriates money for the executive to carry out. It's just not happening, and the users confront a system day after day that is not user-friendly. Woodrow Wilson, not popular in DC anymore, but he wrote in 1885, quite as important as lawmaking. He wrote a book called Congressional Government. It writes, quite as important as lawmaking is vigilant oversight of administration. We ask you to inquire closely about electronic access, tech staff, resource center, expert review of staffing, and make your expectations unmistakably clear in the FY24 decisions on budget and your budget report. Your predecessor said, are we going to come back again in another hearing and not know where things stand and not have timelines and accomplishment? Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks to this panel. It sounds like We've had some consensus here. Anyone want to come back? Come back, panelists. Very good. Hi. So it sounds like we have some consensus here that we want to see some additional staffing. So that we can get some records online, so that we can reduce case backlogs, and get the resource center running better. Ms. Burrs, what was the thing that you said you wanted to double check whether it had been swept?
The funding that was allocated last year, the $200,000 for the baseline study.
Okay.
I assume it's been swept, but if it hasn't, I'm not asking for another $200,000. I just think, as do the other panelists, that we really need to see that study.
Mr. Mulhouse, were you unmuted? You wanted to weigh in on that?
The OAH officials have said repeatedly they're working on a procurement, but it will still not yield the information for this year's cycle that you hoped for. It would be essential and important to do whenever they do it, but I assume the money ought to still be in the budget. If they've reprogrammed it, surely there's some process of consulting the committee that added it before they do that. And they took out a continued $200,000 next year, saying it was a one-time appropriation, but they haven't done the work yet. So will they obligate those funds? If the vendor starts work in August or something and works till Christmas, maybe they only get the bill next January. They'll need FY24 funds to pay that. I'm no appropriations and spending expert, but got to follow the money and make sure it's there when needed.
Okay. We do believe that they have already paid a vendor to do it. So hopefully, but we will talk about this. But it was very recent. All right. So here you all got our marching orders. I don't know where we're going to find the money, but we will look for it. And we will definitely have a robust conversation with the chief judge about this to see what we could potentially do with additional funds here and see where we need to go. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Truly appreciate you taking the time. So now we're going to turn to our government witnesses. We'll be joined first by Jed Ross, the Chief Risk Officer and Director of the Office of Risk Management. Director Ross, I'm going to administer an oath to you before you begin your testimony. We will impanel you and then we will do that. And is there anyone else we need to swear in that will be, okay.
No.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, you may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau, members and staff of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. I'm Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the District of Columbia's Office of Risk Management, ORM. I'm pleased to testify before you today, not only as the Director of ORM, but also as a longtime district resident and advocate for the district, believing wholeheartedly in the Mayor's strategic investments that support our shared DC values. On March 22nd, 2023, Mayor Muriel Bowser presented her fiscal year 2024 budget and financial plan, A Fair Shot, the district's 28th consecutive balanced budget. The $19.7 billion budget proposal includes investments to support public education, provide more opportunities for recreation, improve transportation safety and mobility, expand public housing, address public safety, and more. These investments reflect the key priorities identified by district residents at budget engagement forums during the budget formulation process and provide every Washingtonian with a fair shot. As a district resident employee, I'm extremely proud to work under the mayor, whose comeback plan sets forth an ambitious vision in the face of current economic challenges to bring the district out of the COVID-19 pandemic. An objective we can all enthusiastically support. I too appreciate the leadership you, Chairperson Nadeau, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, and all members of the council have shown during these unprecedented times. ORM's mission is to reduce the probability, occurrence, and cost of risk for the district government. To fulfill this mission, ORM works to institutionalize and systematize the practice of risk management within district government agencies and to reduce the likelihood and severity of potential losses through the implementation of effective risk prevention and control strategies. We achieve these objectives by providing risk management leadership, guidance, and support to district agencies through ORM's 4 main divisions: the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, PSWCP, the Tort Division, the Risk Prevention and Safety Division, RPS, and the Captive Insurance Agency. Together, ORM's divisions work to foster a culture of risk awareness and promote risk management across our government. The FY 2024 proposed budget reflects this mission and addresses ORM's top objectives for the year, including improving the district government's and more specifically ORM's efficiency and responsiveness, identification, analysis, and mitigation of the district government's exposure to risk and liability, administering a customer-oriented public sector workers' compensation program that provides benefits for disability or death of a district government employee sustained while in the performance of duty, improving medical provider relations to the benefit of district government's injured workers, and collection of monies owed to the district from third-party tortfeasors whose negligence or intentional acts result in damage and loss to the district. Today, my testimony will focus on ORM's 4 budgeted agencies, each of which support these objectives: RK0, the Office of Risk Management; BG0, the Employees Compensation Fund; RJ0, the Captive Insurance Agency; and ZH0, the Settlements and Judgment Fund. RK0 represents ORM's primary operating budget. In the mayor's fiscal year 2024 budget, ORM's operating budget is $4,218,908 with 31 full-time equivalents. The FY 2024 budget reflects a net increase of $125,998 over the approved FY 2023 budget. This includes an increase of $190,234 in personal services across multiple programs to support projected salary and fringe benefit cost increases. A proposed decrease of $64,236 in the agency management program is to partially offset the projected increases in personal services, resulting in the aforementioned net increase. Employee Compensation Fund provides fiscal resources to administer the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program for district government employees and to pay the cost of claims pursuant to applicable district law. The Employee Compensation Fund proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 is $20,403,852, with 49 FTEs, representing a FY 2024 budget net decrease of $1,815,482 under the approved fiscal year 2023 budget. The proposed budget also includes the reallocation of 13 FTEs from temporary to full-time status. As with RK0, this budget code is also comprised entirely of local funds. The mission of the Captive Insurance Agency is to provide medical malpractice insurance for local nonprofit health centers and to administer and procure various property and liability insurance policies aimed at protecting the district government, its assets, and resources against potential losses. In fiscal year 2024, the captive budget is $10,502,210, including amounts allocated to the subrogation fund, reflecting a net increase of $22,282 over the fiscal year 2023 budget. This increase allows funding for 1, increased insurance premiums; 2, salaries and fringe benefits for the associated 6 FTEs within the agency; 3, professional service costs; And 4, alignment of resources with operational spending goals. In fiscal year 2024, the primary budget increase of local funds relates to the hardening or difficult insurance markets, particularly in the real property arena. The captives manager, who is also the district's insurance program administrator, continually works with the district insurance brokers to ensure the district government participates in the most competitive insurance markets and receives the best possible rates. In this way, ORM works to implement an insurance program to best protect the district from financial and operational losses. The subrogation fund included in this budget code and administered by ORM's tort division is organized as a collections operation to recoup money owed to the district for losses caused by third parties and to then make funds available to district agencies to repair or replace property damaged by third parties. The proposed fiscal year 2024 budget allocates $693,000 for the purposes authorized by this special purpose fund. The settlements and judgment budget provides fiscal resources to settle claims and lawsuits and pay judgments in most types of civil cases filed against the district. This budget item, generally referred to as the Settlement and Judgment Fund, is administered by ORM. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 is $21,024,759 and does not include any FTEs. The fiscal year 2024 budget represents a net decrease of $7 million under the approved fiscal year 2023 budget. Recognizing anticipated cost savings and settlement funding, the budget is comprised entirely of local funds. Through these 4 budget lines, ORM will continue to provide operational support and service to our constituents, district government employees, and partners. The agency is committed to providing support and risk counsel through partnership, education, and compliance. ORM will continue to operate with its core values of problem solving, accountability, ethics, competency, collaboration, innovation, and most of all, compassion. Like other district agencies, ORM will remain steadfast in our approach and will strive to provide the best level of customer service possible to our constituents and partners. Thank you, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations for the opportunity to testify in support of the Mayor's fiscal year 2024 budget. This budget reflects the impacts of the global coronavirus pandemic and Mayor Bowser's ongoing commitment to good government and fiscal responsibility without compromising our shared DC values. ORM looks forward to your support and our continued partnership. This time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Very much. I want to start with some questions sent to us by the Council Office on Race Equity that will help me better understand any racial disparities that may exist in your agency operations. In your proposed FY24 budget, are there specific programs or allocations that are specifically designed to address racial or economic inequities faced by district residents? If you could detail those.
So the Office of Risk Management as a reactive agency generally does not perform any functions like that. However, as I discussed, our medical malpractice insurance policies are provided to district clinics who are providing care to our most vulnerable residents, regardless of their racial or ethnic makeup. And obviously, based on the numbers, they predominantly are helping individuals of a diverse nature. That being said, we don't do any particular efforts as we treat everybody equally, regardless of the claims that are filed based on their racial and equity statuses.
In your proposed FY24 budget, which reductions may burden certain communities more than others? And if applicable, what strategies has your department taken to mitigate any potential adverse impacts?
ORM expects that our proposed FY24 budget will have no impact on any other communities in any different way. We expect to continue providing the similar services that we have.
How much of the agency's data is collected or disaggregated by race? Are there performance or operational data points that could be collected by race that aren't currently?
So the only data points that we could potentially collect is allowing individuals when they file a claim to elect to notify us of their racial makeup. However, it would be illegal to require that. You shouldn't have to disclose your ethnicity or your race or any of the protected traits in the District of Columbia in order to file a claim against the district. So we don't require, there are no obligations to do any of that. As I said, us being more reactive in that function, we don't want to create any hurdles or barriers or burdens on anyone that would put them in fear of filing a claim when they're entitled to monies from the taxpayers for harms that the district government has caused.
Okay. As part of the next budget season, how could community members, especially communities of color and low-income communities, be engaged or consulted to identify programming or service needs for your department?
We are very open to feedback, ideas, anything that we can do to help save more taxpayer money while also providing excellent service, being more responsive. During the pandemic, we had received a letter saying, make your tort claim filing process more available. And so we made it online, right? So anyone can always write to ORM@dc.gov, and that email will come to us, and we'll be more than happy to meet with anyone. As I alluded to before, we don't really have any, as a reactive agency as it relates to claims. We are proactive in terms of buying insurance and thinking about risk mitigation strategies, but not necessarily things that are directly impacting from a racial perspective. But anybody should email ORM@dc.gov, and I am more than happy to help work with partnering agencies and anything we can do to help make the district a better and more inclusive place.
Great. Thank you. All right, so the agency's performance oversight responses stated that ORM experienced a spending pressure during FY22 due to several factors, including increases in real property and cyber liability insurance premiums and payments to mitigate property and cyber losses. The responses also noted that the agency did not anticipate any spending pressures during FY23. Is that still accurate?
At present, ORM is not forecasting any pressures. We don't know what will happen in the insurance marketplace. So we don't know what the quotes will be from the insurance carriers. We have not gone out to the marketplace for our next policy that we're trying to procure. And as a result, we don't have any direct pressures yet. And if they come, we will work with the Office of Budget and Performance Management to ensure we're doing what's best for the taxpayers. So no pressures right at this moment.
So the reasons for the spending pressures during FY22, were those one-time or recurring issues?
So in the insurance marketplace, in the insurance world, you don't know what's going to happen with if rates are in an increase or rates will stay stagnant or they will go up or down. We think that our cyber policies will stay pretty stable. We don't expect there to be the big increases that we had seen in the past, although we just don't know. And then on a property perspective, as you know, council member, with the pandemic and with the war in Ukraine, there were significant increases in costs for construction, inflation that had a significant impact on the real property construction, rebuilding buildings, marketplace, and that had a big financial impact. So we really don't know what will happen, a year from now or even 6 months from now. We did see that there was a very hardening of the market, as I testified about in my opening statement. There just was, the world changed and the insurance carriers kind of adjusted to those significant costs of construction that they had to reimburse for that were a big spike. And as a result, rates went up. But I think, right now we don't have any pressures and we'll be able to work through that and make sure we adjust accordingly as we need.
So the limited supply pressure has stabilized?
I think that the insurance carriers, they increased the rates significantly in order to accommodate for that. They also were doing a thing globally with any and every and all owners of real estate. They were They were also looking at the valuation of their properties. So you create a master list of all your properties, you provide that to your insurance carrier, and you say, this is how much the value of all of our properties are. I think that the carriers, in addition to saying they wanted to make more money on their rates and the premiums, they also were going and saying, you've undervalued because of inflation, now your rates are more. And we think that they have gone through that exercise with the district, and that we won't see significant increases again based on valuations. There might be ones, oftentimes the way the rates work in insurance, it comes down to, did that insurance carrier have a lot of losses? So that insurance carrier might have a tsunami that they're paying out billions of dollars in a global environment that they need to figure out how to make up their profits that has an impact on the entirety of the insurance marketplace. So you just never know what it will be. And obviously with the inflation and the pandemic, it had a big impact on rates. There were a lot of natural disasters that the carriers were paying for, whether it be floods or other items. And the uncertainty in the marketplace. So they increased rates, and they went after valuations to increase those, saying you are undervaluing your properties. And as a result, we want you to pay more, both on the value and then the rate on that value. So it was kind of a double whammy that hopefully I think we're through that for next fiscal year.
What activity in your budget covers that expense?
That is in our RJ0. It is in our non-personal services funds for that agency budget code. And that is where we buy our insurance policies. Very important that, as the mayor has proposed, that we don't lose money. And I believe that actually, council member, goes with another committee oftentimes in the Economic Development Committee. And there have been times when, without coordination, we don't always have the opportunity to discuss that, because there isn't always a hearing in that committee with that particular agency and budget code. So it's very critical that we not have a reduction, as that would create a big challenge for us to be able to buy insurance for the district.
Got it. That agency being Disney.
No, it is with the Office of Risk Management.
Okay.
But the committee is the Business and Economic Development Committee, often oversees that budget code, is actually with that particular committee. So there are times in that committee will make decisions on budget that has an impact on that particular budget code.
Wait, RJO is with another committee?
Yes.
Oh, because it's a separate fund. Okay.
It's a separate fund. Yeah, we have 4 budget codes with the Office of Risk Management. And actually, officially, RK0 is the only one under this committee. And the Employee Compensation Fund, which is BG0, actually sits with the Labor Committee.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I got you. Because of how they are programmatically. Okay. Was there an increase in the budget to cover the increased insurance costs?
There was a small increase in our RJ0 budget, which should, we are able to manage to the budget. We think that we will have the resources to do what we need to do to properly protect the district.
Okay. There is an increase of 5 FTEs in CSG 11 and a decrease of 5 FTEs in CSG 12. To put a finer point on it, there appears to be a clear one-to-one shift between CSG 11 and 12. For example, in activity 1010 personnel, there's an increase of 1 FTE in CSG 11, decrease of 1 FTE in CSG 12. There's also a 1 FTE shift in activity 1090, performance management, and a 3 FTE shift in activity 4110, claims examination and management. Between CSG 11 and CSG 12, this accounts for an increase in spending of about $150,000 plus some additional fringe. Is this agency shifting these positions from contractors to full-time employees, or is there a different explanation?
They're from term employees to full-time permanent employees. So there's really no shift whatsoever, Councilmember. It's just moving employees from term appointments to permanent appointments. The increase in personal services dollars, as noted, is simply a matter of being able to cover the cost of living adjustments and the step increases. There's no increase of positions and no other changes. So it's just kind of budget exercises and the ability to pay when step increases occur and cost of living adjustments occur. So we are not getting any, there are no increases for monies to be swept. It's more of a purely mechanical situation to ensure we don't have a reduction in force.
Great, thank you. How many of ORM's 31 FTEs are currently vacant?
I believe at this time there's 4 vacancies, but all are in active recruitment, whether posted or being interviewed. We have some employees who've accepted. We've had employees who've accepted and then gotten better offers and went elsewhere, or employees who started and then those other offers followed through. But we are very engaged in ensuring that we're 100% full on all of our vacancies. And we definitely need all of our vacancies, Councilmember.
And you don't need any of them to address vacancy savings rates?
No, we do not. Our vacancy saving rate is around 4.5%. And, when an employee resigns and they move on to another job, it takes time to go through the HR process, and our vacancy rate is kind of accurate for what it needs to be. So we're in a good position. We are not holding any positions from a vacancy perspective right at the moment. We are a smaller agency, and we, have a big mission and lots of constituents to serve. So it's our goal to ensure that we are filling all of our vacancies as fast as possible and meeting then our vacancy goals. I will say, Councilmember, the Office of Risk Management, since I have been on board, has never once, from a vacancy and position perspective, never once been in the red. We manage to our budget really effectively, and oftentimes have much less than $100,000 in leftover dollars. We are not one to, just have significant excess in our RK0 budget in managing those positions, as you referenced.
Great, thank you. And what's the fringe benefit rate?
I'll go through all my different budget codes for that. Okay. For BG0, the Workers' Compensation Fund, it's 23.87%. For RJ0, which is again the captive insurance agency, it's 22%. And for RK0, it's 23.2%, I believe.
Thank you.
Actually,
right.
RJ0 is 23.7, just to be clear. But yes, they're all around 23%, 22 to 24%, depending on what's going on. And they look at that based on the utilization. So each year, how many employees had actually, were on their spouse's health benefits versus on the districts, and then they assume a new rate each year for us.
Okay. There is a reduction of about $41,000 in CSG 40 activity 1015 risk management. What's the reduction coming from?
It's coming from just managing our contractual services, but we don't expect any loss of service to our stakeholders. We expect to fully be able to manage to that small reduction.
Okay. So you're not going to be forgoing any professional service or contracts because of that?
None that would have any, I don't believe it's any professional services, but nothing, if we do forego any, IT services or other things, it'll have no impact on any of our services to any of our stakeholders.
Because you can do them in-house, or because you're not going to do them, or?
We are, we're going to plan accordingly to ensure that we can continue operating at the exact same level, if not even better.
Okay. And any particular contracts that are impacted?
Nothing that I believe is, I believe talking a little bit about some of our not buying new laptops or planning to buy new laptops. So something that we'll be able to manage to with our partners at Octo and with our team here. So, things of that sort to manage our budget accordingly, but nothing that will have any impact on services, as I said.
Okay. I see there's a cut of $23,000 in IT hardware acquisitions. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, Councilmember, those are things that we'll plan accordingly in this budget cycle, as everybody has to make sure that we're functioning and operating. We're going to ensure that we're able to do that efficiently and effectively. So we will continue to work with what we have in fiscal year 23 and ensure that we're planning accordingly.
Okay, so let me just be clear too, because that's a different activity. So the IT hardware is CSG 70 and the other activity is CSG 40. So the CSG 70 would be the IT hardware acquisition.
Yes, you're right, Councilmember. I can get back to you on it, but I can assure you that we will manage that $41,000 in CSG 40. It'll have no impact on services whatsoever.
Okay, so then the CSG 70, the $23,000, that is laptops?
Correct. I mean, it's IT hardware. I just want to, sometimes, if we needed headphones or things that are phone oriented items or laptops, but the majority of it's related to laptops. That was what the planning for was, but we're in a good position. We have what we need in order to function and operate.
Okay, so you'll get back to me on CSG 40 because that was listed as professional service fees and contracts. So, all right. And then just confirming has the $25,000 allocated to IT hardware acquisitions in FY23 been spent yet?
I believe some has, but not all, though I fully expect that we are going to expend the entirety of that to make sure that we're also planning for next year accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also be just, a mouse or keyboard, the things that break, as you know.
Right, for sure. Okay, I'm curious about the capital project currently being implemented by Octo for ORM, the adding additional enhancements to eRisk to integrate it with existing district systems and data. Your performance oversight responses indicated that eRisk is updated continuously. Does this mean there's no end date to the capital project?
So we expect the capital project to be winding down in fiscal year 23. There's not very much funding within the capital project. We don't expect to ask for more money. We believe the system is in more of an operational phase, but we continue to build out enhancements for our workers' compensation module. We continue to, when the different program administrators of the Office of Risk Management say, it'd be really great if I could get a report, or if the system would automate and do this, or it could partner with Octo and get data in this way from this other agency. So those are just continuous, improvements that are being made on the system. But we believe that the capital project is winding down as it results to fiscal year 23 being the last.
Can you provide an update on the claims management playbook that ORM is in the process of developing?
Yeah, our insurance program team is working along with our broker. What they are doing is trying to ascertain and ensure that whenever we have purchased these insurance policies, if it's a new insurance carrier or a different insurance carrier, they only need to follow certain steps and processes. And we're working to document those within a district government framework compared to the private sector. So just making sure that claims handbook is done. So the team has been working on it. I've seen some drafts, but they continue to need to kind of flesh it out to make sure that it's efficient and effective in the management of claims whenever they occur. It's kind of all hands on deck. If there's a claim, we always manage it really well. We put in all the effort, but I want to figure out a way to better systematize that, or at least document it. And it gets to be challenging because you're dealing with huge multi-billion-dollar, corporations who have their own insurance processes. So kind of ensuring that those claims management details are documented and appropriate. But in the meantime, we are following through with our experts, our broker and the insurance team at the Office of Risk Management. Who know what to do, but we just want to documenting it. So that's what I've requested that they do. And they've been working on drafts. And we continue to make sure that we're going to be in alignment with the way that the commercial insurance marketplace works, given our district government operations and challenges that we always have to follow through with.
Yeah. What about the anticipated expansion of your enterprise risk management efforts?
Yeah, we've had a lot of great conversations around this. We're working on recruiting for a management analyst into that role. In addition to that, we're working on supporting a kind of a survey to try and reach out to agencies to get a little bit more of those enterprise-wide concerns from the agencies. And so we're working on that, and it's our hope and our goal to kind of get agencies to survey them for just a few questions to really understand a little bit more about some of their enterprise risks to their particular agencies, and then get a bigger picture from there.
Now, I know the committee that formerly had ORM under its jurisdiction made a number of policy recommendations in its budget report last year, and there are a few I want to follow up on. The committee recommended that ORM begin a more formal tracking of worksite hazard response time data. Is this something the agency has been doing? And if not, why not?
I believe we are. So whenever we receive a worksite challenge or issue that has arisen, if it's something where there's a health and safety concern that's ongoing, we send out our risk prevention and safety team, and they go out and they perform a health and safety check, and then they write up a report, and all that's logged into the system and is timed and understood. So generally within 48 hours, if not same day, more often than not, I would say same day or 24 hours, we go out to go check on something when we get a complaint or notification about a larger scale issue, health and safety issue. So we're doing that pretty regularly, and we're tracking it through the system. So another benefit of the ERIS system. But beyond that, we're not looking at each and every workers' compensation claim from a perspective of, going out in a health and safety concern, unless it has an attributable bigger health and safety concern with more risks that are going to continue based on something not being rectified. And in that circumstance, we would do so. Our fantastic team members in our risk prevention and safety team, and even our tort claims team, look at every incident that comes into the system. So whenever we become notified of something, whenever people are filing incidents about health and safety concerns, which they can also do anonymously, each and every one of those is being looked at. And whenever there's a health and safety concern that is ongoing, or something that is a global issue, our health and safety folks will go out and take a look at it, and then they'll write up a report around that, and we have that logged into our system.
Okay, so let's say you wanted to run a report to see, where worksite hazard, like how we were doing, and like average response times. Would you be able to do that?
We should be able to generate a report to talk about when it was sent to us, when we performed our report, and even most often when there was a closing date to that particular matter. As sometimes things aren't always able to be closed out because they could involve large capital expenditures, and DGS has to go and procure things or find money, and money has to be appropriated in order to make a big fix when it's a larger issue. But if there are minor things, and we're tracking that as well, we work very closely with DGS on those particular issues, and then we will follow up to ascertain what's going on. We also will work with the agency risk management representatives. These are the risk managers at the agencies, and we'll follow up with them to ascertain ascertain where is the status of this. Has somebody resolved it? Have they fixed that fire hazard or that place that's too hot or too cold or whatever the potential concern was. And so we can generate within our system reports around all of that information that we have.
So you could see response time by ORM, but also resolution time.
We can see resolution time. It doesn't necessarily mean that we may have taken a lot of steps in outreach to other people trying to get something resolved. It doesn't always work as simplistically as we like. Oftentimes also we have to be very careful that we don't want to duplicate what DGS is doing around work orders or what DCPS is doing around work orders. So we want to be very careful that we're not asking them to fill out information twice. So we're talking about integrating and getting sharing of data in a better way. But definitively, we should know from the date we become notified of the incident, our report about what we found when we went out to the site, and then later, if there was a closing of that particular issue, we should be able to generate. But oftentimes things take time, and obviously,
that's not I guess I'm trying to just get at like how long it takes for ORM to respond to the complaint.
We are, I would say 24 to 40 hours. And yes, okay. I would be able to generate something about that.
Okay, 24 to 48. Okay.
Especially if it's reported as an incident in our system, Councilmember.
Sure, understood. Great. Well, I'd love to see, it seems like the committee prior had been asking for a report or formal tracking. So could we see, say, an FY22, FY23 year-to-date report on ORM response and closure times? And so we could also see, which agencies take more time to respond.
I'd be happy to work with the committee on that, Councilmember. And I will say all the agencies are very responsive to us, especially when it's a health and safety concern. So I want to make that very clear. It's only when they are larger capital projects that it becomes a conflict, but or that it takes an extenuated time frame. But otherwise, everyone is always really on it. We have really wonderful partnerships. We're very appreciative of those partnerships, and I owe a lot of credit to my team who do an excellent job of being good partners to try and resolve things for all of our employees. Obviously, that is part of the overall goal, to be proactive in solving something so it doesn't turn into a workers' comp injury or some tort claim later.
Thank you. The committee also recommended that ORM report quarterly on how much money has been collected from subrogation efforts and where the funds are being collected. This seems like something could be easily implemented. Would you be willing to do this?
We are, I believe it might be done within our financial review reports that are done quarterly. So I think that might already exist, but it's something that we track very regularly. I'm really proud of my subrogation team. They are amazingly hardworking civil servants who, I believe this year have crossed over the $500,000 threshold already in terms of collections on behalf of the taxpayers. So 3 people, putting in lots and lots of work, sending out lots and lots of requests. And we actually really strengthened our partnership with the Office of Attorney General, who are also helping us in affirmatively going after those that are not so responsive to us. So we are reporting that regularly, and we're happy to do so, or through our FRP reports that come out on a quarterly basis. That information is also reported there, I believe, Councilmember.
Great. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you today.
Really appreciate all your help and your time, Councilmember.
Appreciate your responsiveness, and I'd like to thank your team as well for all the agency does.
I'm so lucky to have this great team, and your team is fantastic as well. And I love the committee staff has been great, and anything that we ever can do to help support you, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we will now be joined by the Chief Administrative Law Judge at the Office of Administrative Hearings, Judge Colleen M. Curry, as well as Lachelle Jenkins, the Chief Operating Officer, and Siobhan Smith, the Agency Fiscal Officer. Great. Okay. And could we have Siobhan Smith also with camera, just in case I'm going to swear all three of you in, just in case we need to call on anybody else. If you could unmute yourselves, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Judge Curry, you may begin your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Nadeau, committee members and staff. I am Colleen Curry, the Chief Administrative Law Judge for OAH. Thank you for allowing me to address you today about the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget for OAH. I am joined this afternoon by our Chief Operating Officer, Lachelle Jenkins, and OAH's Agency Fiscal Officer, Siobhan Smith, both of whom are available to help answer any technical questions you or the committee members may have. As you mentioned, OAH's fiscal year 2024 proposed gross budget is approximately $11.8 million and supports 103 full-time equivalent positions. This budget amount comprises entirely local funds and $300,000 in Medicaid grant funds. The largest single expenditure of our gross budget, 90%, is approximately $10,560,000 for personnel services funding. The remainder, approximately $1,233,000, is for non-personnel services funding. Overall, OAH's budget reflects a 1.7% reduction in our overall budget from last year. This reduction is due to a combination of factors. In non-personnel services, the fiscal year 24 budget reflects a reduction of $200,000, which represents the removal of one-time fiscal year 23 funding earmarked for a workload study. Those funds remain in our fiscal year 23 budget, and OAH is currently in the final stages of procurement, working with OCP to make an award over the next few weeks. We intend to complete that study before the end of fiscal year 23. In personnel services, the decrease is due to the improper inactivation of budget authority for one FTE position. OAH intends to correct that error during budget execution at the beginning of fiscal year 24. While OAH is generally satisfied with its proposed budget for fiscal year 24, we continue to be concerned about the backlogs of cases that currently exist and our ability to address those backlogs efficiently, effectively, and in a timely manner. We have in the past few years utilized non-personnel funds for temporary contractual workers to address the backlogs in processing cases. Our current fiscal year 24 non-personnel services budget, being as small as it is, provides little room to continue this practice. At this time, we believe that temporary staffing is the most prudent way to continue our efforts to address these backlogs. While we understand the budget constraints for the district as a whole in fiscal year 24, I only mention this to gently sound an alarm about our continued ability to process and adjudicated cases filed with our agency in a timely manner in light of the increased case filings and resulting backlogs that we have discussed at our performance oversight hearing earlier this year. In closing, OAH thanks Mayor Bowser and you, Chairman Nadeau, for your collective guidance and continued support as OAH continues to focus on our core mandate. That is to adjudicate the cases brought before us as efficiently and fairly as possible, with the broader goal of providing the best service possible to the communities we serve. That includes ensuring equal access to our hearings, continuing to identify ways we can remove barriers to broad participation in those hearings, remaining attuned to the needs of our communities that we serve, and adapting to those needs where possible, and being mindful about stewardship of the public resources entrusted to us and engagement with our stakeholders to respond not only to their concerns, but also to the needs of our litigant. I would like to thank OAH's Chief Operating Officer, Lachelle Jenkins, General Counsel Smriti Radkar, Agency Fiscal Officer Siobhan Smith, Budget Officer Ebony Temple, and Administrative Officer Nicole Green for their assistance in preparing for this hearing. Thank you for your time today, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And this is the third budget cycle where we've gotten to work with the council office on race equity, but since it's the first year I have this committee, I'd like to ask some questions that'll help me better understand any racial disparities that may exist in agency operations. In your proposed FY24 budget, are there specific programs or allocations that are specifically designed to address racial or economic inequities faced by district residents?
No, there are not.
In your proposed FY24 budget, which reductions may burden certain communities more than others? And if applicable, what strategies has your department taken to mitigate any potential adverse impacts?
Well, we as an agency, being a central hearing panel, we do not track racial data. We provide equal justice to anyone who comes to us. The only data that we track in relation to that is language access, and in some case types we get information about ward, the location of the litigants, but only in very little. So I wouldn't be able to speak directly to that question.
If the spending pressure that you talked about with the backlog, do you have a sense of whether that would have adverse impact on any particular community more than another?
I do not. The backlogs that we experienced as we discussed at our oversight hearing are in almost exclusively the DCRA DOB case type, and also the cases that we hear from the Department of Public Works. And those are broad expanses. The cases that are brought to us are enforcement cases that are brought by the agencies. So it depends on the enforcement of those other agencies about what cases come to us. So we don't really have any control over that. And I can't speak to how the enforcement of those other agencies works.
As part of the next budget season, how could community members, especially communities of color and low-income communities, be engaged or consulted to identify programming or service needs for your department?
We certainly work closely with OLAN. We have the OAH task force, task force. We have the OAH advisory committee, and we work very closely with the legal services providers and to understand what the pressures are on their clients.
Right. You tried to answer this in your testimony, but I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you think your proposed budget for FY24 is adequate?
We cannot anticipate how much enforcement is going to increase. We do know that the Department of Buildings and the Department of Public Works have upped their enforcement. And we also know that with the end of the federal emergency, some case types we will see increases. And so I anticipate that we will be able to handle it with the budget that we have, except for processing the cases, which is the real stress point for us right now.
The FY24 proposed budget includes a total reduction of 5 FTEs under CSG 11. That's a reduction of approximately 6%. I also see there's an increase of 5 FTEs in CSG 12. While this means the total number of FTEs at the agency has remained the same, there's a lot more nuance to the changes in staffing when looking at enhancements and reductions of FTEs at the activity level. On this topic, I have several questions to help better understand what's happening with personnel. Of the 83 FTEs at OAH, how many are currently vacant?
Currently we have a total of 15 vacancies. 11 of those are locally funded and 4 are interagency, and those are all on the PFL fund. We are waiting to learn what reductions will be approved in the supplemental fiscal year 23 BSA, and until we have executed the fiscal year 23 interagency MOUs with DOES for the unemployment insurance project and for the PFL project, to be able to know how quickly we can fill those positions.
How many of these positions have to stay vacant to address the agency's vacancy savings rate?
We're still trying to determine exactly how many we have to keep vacant. We suspect it's probably going to be middle of the road. For the locally funded ones, probably between 7 and 11, but we're not entirely sure yet. We still have to do some number crunching.
And what is the agency's vacancy savings rate?
Siobhan, can you tell us what that is? I want to say 1.5%, but I might be wrong.
Yes, I'm going to tell you right now. I'm so sorry. Let me pull it up for you. Sorry, Councilwoman Cumming.
No problem.
You were right. I'm so sorry, Chief. 1.5%. Yep.
While you're looking that up, okay, so you mentioned you're waiting on for the vacancies that you don't need just for the rate, the ones you're planning on filling. You're waiting on PFL and UI, is that right? That accounts for all 15 of them, or did I miss one?
No, the 4 positions are on interagency for the PFL fund. The other 11 are locally funded.
Got it.
And Siobhan said our vacancy rate confirmed that it is 1.5%.
Great. And so what is the plan for filling the 11?
As I said, we're needing to crunch some more numbers to determine which of those positions we are able to fill. We're waiting to learn what reductions will be approved in the supplemental fiscal year 23 BSA to determine how many of those positions we can fill right away. We are in active recruitment. We have been in active recruitment on all of them.
Okay.
So we're working to fill those.
Okay. What's the fringe benefit rate?
Fiscal year 23, it's 20.1%, and fiscal year 24, it's 20.2%. So just about 20% for both years.
There is a reduction of 1 FTE in CSG 11 for activity 40A, case management and judicial support services. Is the FTE being cut currently vacant?
That one is the one that I mentioned in my testimony. That's the one that was improperly defunded. And we were going to fix that in execution at the beginning of fiscal year 24. So we're not actually losing that position.
Okay. Got it. Activity 1010 personnel master currently has 1 CSG 11 FTE in FY23. And this FTE is being cut in the FY24 proposed budget. What's the purpose of this FTE?
I'm sorry, say the title of the position again.
1010 is activity 1010 personnel master currently has 1 FTE in CSG 11 that's being cut between 23 and 24.
We'll have to look into that because I don't remember seeing that. We have a filled position of FTE in our personnel master.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. I see there's also an enhancement of 1 FTE in CSG 12 for this activity. Maybe it's moving from 11 to 12.
It sounds like
Yes.
That's what's happening.
Siobhan says yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's just a shift. Yes.
Okay. That happens sometimes. Okay. Didn't mean to alarm anyone.
Scared me there for a minute.
Sorry. Okay. Usually when an agency converts a CSG 11 FTE to a CSG 12 FTE, they're able to save money, for example, by cutting fringe. However, the total amount allocated for activity 1010 is increasing by about 17,000. Can you explain that?
Lachelle or Siobhan, are you able to talk to that, speak to that?
Michelle, did you want me to?
Okay.
So let me see, you're talking about in 1010.
Yeah, so essentially this position's getting more expensive, wondering why.
Well, part of any increase for is take into account the impact of the FY22 cost of living adjustment on salaries and fringe. So even though, so all of the positions have gotten more expensive. So some of the reason why you see an increase is mainly because of COLA. However, for this one particular position, let me just make sure.
It's a $17,000 increase.
Yeah, no.
And then just to follow up with the why shifting between CSG 12 and 11, was there, maybe there was a promotion?
So under 1010 personnel master. Lachelle, is that where the HR specialist sits? Because that's the other position that I know that shifted from CSG 11 to CSG 12, the HR specialist.
That sounds right.
Okay. Okay.
So was that a promotion then?
Between.
Well, I'm wondering why it moved from 11 to 12 and why the additional 17.
So the 17K is definitely the COLA impact across the board. The increase of 17K is the COLA impact, FY22 specifically, COLA impact on salaries and subsequently fringe.
For multiple employees?
For multiple employees, yes, ma'am.
And then any idea why the shift from CSG 11 to 12?
Chief, I am not sure. I don't necessarily have off the top of my head why the HR specialist position shifted from CSG 11 to CSG 12, but I can get that information for you and we can definitely follow back up.
Yeah, we will need to follow back up on that. I suspect it's aligning with the reporting structure and the structure that had changed between 22, 23, 21, 22, and 23. So, but we'll have to get back to you on that one.
Thank you. All right. There's a reduction of 3 FTEs in activity 1040, information technology, in the FY24 proposed budget. This is greater than a 60% reduction of FTEs in this activity from 5 to 2. It's particularly surprising and concerning since just last year, Council enhanced the agency's IT staffing to address issues with the online portal. Was the agency able to fill the positions added to this activity in FY23?
We have not filled those positions yet. Our analysis revealed that positions and budget relating to these positions didn't align, and we're going to be rectifying it in fiscal year 24 budget execution.
Meaning it was enough money for the level you needed to hire, or?
Siobhan?
So there's a couple of things. So the positions do exist. The part of the problem is that right now the agency is carrying salaries and fringe for employees who should be interagency funded. And so until we can get those things sorted out, along with any reductions that were going to come through the supplemental, the agency just has needed to take a pause on actively hiring any new positions at this point in time. We're working on the second quarter FRP to provide Chief Curry the analysis she needs to make that decision. If that makes any sense.
It does. I'd like to know which agencies.
They're all with DOES. Yeah.
The interagency funds that we have are the unemployment insurance project and the paid family leave fund. And I don't know the numbers of the funds off the top of my head. Siobhan can probably give those to you.
We're working to finalize those agreements.
Do you have any idea if those positions are funded in DOES?
We're working through that. We know that out of the 3 interagency agreements, the MOUs, we did receive a fully executed MOU. We are working to receive the other 2 to ensure that funding is available and the agency does not have to absorb those costs.
And no, we do not know for sure whether the funding is available in the PFL fund. We do know the funding should be there in the unemployment insurance fund.
Okay. All right, so are all 5 of these vacant then? In the current activity?
The 4 interagency positions are vacant. Those are the vacancies.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Have the 3 FTEs that we're talking about being cut in the FY24 proposed budget already been cut in the FY23 revised budget?
We don't have 3 positions that are being cut. We're at the same level. We're 103, 103.
Yeah, but they'd be going over, right? Like they'd be going. I just want to make sure. Has the ask this differently? All right, so they still exist, but they're going to be interagency positions. Is that shift happening with the supplemental as well, or just with the FY24 budget?
Chief, are you okay with me?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the 3 positions, once we can get the interagency positions, if we are able, in 24, it looks the exact same way. So those positions should be interagency funded. If we can secure an MOU and have the salaries directly hit the other agencies' payroll, which is what it's supposed to be this year. We're hoping that this is a one-off this year and we're having some of these hiccups. However, going forward, the 3 positions that you were referring to that the agency got in an enhancement last year would be locally funded, hopefully filled, and that is the expectation in the FY24 budget, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but you're not anticipating trying to do it earlier in FY23 in the supplemental?
No, the agency, the supplemental, they had to take a reduction in the proposed supplemental. So with that being said, And Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lachelle, you as well, if I am over speaking, but I do not believe that the hiring plan with that reduction in place would allow the agency to hire into those 3 positions.
That's correct. I believe our plan was to do it for October 1st for those 3 positions.
We're going to follow up on this because
Absolutely.
it's confusing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
rather than
Yes.
trying to sort this all in real time, I'm going to keep moving and admit I'm defeated on that particular round of questions, but we'll come back to you. Okay. So the FY24 Budget Support Act includes a subtitle entitled the Concealed Pistol License Appeals Amendment Act 2023. The FIST for the subtitle includes approximately $217,000 recurring for salary and fringe benefits in the OAH budget. The committee is not able to move the subtitle through the Budget Support Act for logistical reasons. So I'm interested in how these funds were allocated. I can see that $180,458 was allocated to CSG 11 salary, and $37,174 was allocated to CSG 14 fringe. How many FTEs does this represent?
That would represent 1 FTE.
And in what activity are these enhancements?
That would be in court support. It's the deputy general counsel, or I'm sorry, deputy clerk position.
Okay, so let's see. What is the budget activity number?
Yvonne, can you help me with that? Sorry.
For the deputy,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm looking it up. I apologize, I'm coming.
It's no problem.
All right, the activity number for the deputy is so I see 040A as the activity, 400A as the program. For the deputy clerk,
Great. Do you have any recommendations on how the agency could reallocate the resources currently assigned to this subtitle?
Well, we would, if we're in desperate need of more clerks and deputy clerk. We're because of the huge increase in cases that we've seen in our licensing and enforcement jurisdiction, we need another deputy clerk to help us process those cases and organize them and get them teed up for hearing.
Okay. Since the committee will be unable to move this subtitle through the BSA, will the agency intend to move this legislation through the normal legislative process?
That's not necessarily our decision. I'm not quite sure of whether it's going to be moved through in a different way. I believe so, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Under CSG 12 Activity 30A, Judicial Assistance and Legal Counsel, there's an increase of 4 FTEs. What's the increase for the, what's the reason for the increase of 4 FTEs? What will they be doing?
Siobhan and Lachelle, that's the shift, right? That we spoke of earlier. We're moving,
Yes, ma'am. So those are your law clerks.
right. So OAH partners with Georgetown Law Center for a fellowship program. And those positions are the law clerks. They're 13-month term positions.
You have 1 now, right?
We have 4.
You have 4 now. Okay, sorry. So that's just a shift. I see.
Yeah.
How does the agency, okay, so you don't have to fill these positions. Georgetown will send you the fellows?
They send us a list of proposed, and we have a group of judges who review and select. And they fill the positions. They're 13-month positions, but generally they start in the fall, and a lot of them end up with permanent full-time positions, so they leave before the end of their 13 months. Occasionally we have a clerk or 2 who stay on for the entire 13 months, which pushes the hiring next one back.
They don't stay the whole 13 months?
Sometimes they get full-time jobs, next step in their career, so they leave us early. Which is good for them, bad for us, but.
Yeah, but they don't have to commit to a length of time. That kind of screws you over, doesn't it?
Most of them stay for at least 10 months. So pretty much the entire of their term.
And when they move on before the 13 months, does Georgetown offer somebody at that time, or do you have to wait until the next 13-month term?
We usually wait until the fall because it's that late in the season.
Got it. And you have how many clerks do you, I'm sorry, how many fellows do you have right now?
We have 4 fellows right now.
They're all there. Okay. Okay. And there are 11 FTEs in CSG 11 for the same activity in FY23 as well as FY24 proposed budget. How many of those positions are currently vacant?
Wait,
must be something else in there.
I'm sorry.
There must be something else in that.
This is the same law clerk position.
So CSG 11 may have something more than law clerks in there. I think the reason we were talking about that was because I'd asked about the increase of 4 FTEs, and the answer to that was the law clerks. But I think there are 11 total in the same activity. And I'm wondering,
we do have 6 law clerk positions. Right now, only 4 of them are filled. And that was because there weren't enough applicants for the positions.
Got it.
And some of the law clerks overlap. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. There's 5. We now have 5 law clerks. Some of them overlap, which is why we have 11 positions.
Okay, good, because I was just going to ask how 4 and 6 got to 10, and I knew it wasn't me. Okay, so
yeah, 5.
Like my math isn't that bad.
I missed one.
No, it's good. We're just, we're keeping it real up here. It's fine. Okay. Now, OAH is one of the few agencies that uses CSG 13, which is additional gross pay. I can see that in the FY23 approved budget and the FY24 proposed budget, the agency is spending approximately $92,000 in activity 30A. judicial assistance and legal counsel. What does this pay for?
Siobhan or Lachelle?
Is that the clerks?
For the
You said-
additional gross pay. Okay, let me see.
Or why are we using CSG 13? Maybe another way to talk about this.
Yeah, I wanted to see what the specific comp object was, what specifically. Let me see. Okay. So it looks like. Sorry, my computer is just running so slow. Okay, CSG 13. I am so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so some of it is towards terminal leave.
Mhm.
I don't see holiday pay. I don't see. Oh, it's all sitting in terminal leave. And I think it was just straight line from, I see that we had it also in the FY23 approved. About the same.
Yeah.
amount. Yeah.
For 2 years. Isn't it unusual to have it in there for 2 years?
Yes. I would probably venture to say that 9 times out of 10 it's not going to stay there, that there will be a reprogramming request, more than likely for both FY23 and FY24 to move some of that. Because when I look at actuals, it's not quite as high as what's budgeted for.
Okay.
So it's using the prior year budget to budget for the future year, or the current year budget. But when you look at actuals, it could be repurposed, Chief, for somewhere else needed in the budget.
Good to know.
Mhm.
Yep. That's why we ask these things. Breaking news. Okay. So, all right. So I see there is a 50% reduction in CSG 20 supplies and materials in the proposed FY24 budget. What are these reductions coming from?
Those are supplies, office supplies.
Oh, okay. And does the agency have the resources it needs to fulfill its mission, notwithstanding this cut?
That cut will not impact us. That one of the benefits of doing everything electronically now is we don't use anywhere near as much paper.
Yes, that is a benefit.
Good for us.
How much
good for
of
the environment?
Exactly. How much of the approved budget for CSG 20 has been spent thus far in FY23?
Siobhan, you're going to have to answer that one for us.
Yes, ma'am. I will pull that up right now. RP. So thus far in office supplies and CSG 20. I would say as of February. Spreadsheets is coming, I apologize.
That's all right. That's why we're here. Okay.
It's opening.
Your computer did not get the memo. Today was go time, huh?
No, it's like, come on. Okay. So I would say out of the current budget, about a fifth, about 10,000. So about a fifth has been spent thus far in supplies and materials.
Great, thank you. Do you expect Judge Curry to fully spend the funds allocated to CSG 20 and FY 23?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Under CSG 40 Activity 50A, Program Direction and Oversight, $200,000 is swept from the FY 23 approved budget. What's the purpose of these funds in FY 23?
That is the workload study.
How much of these funds have been, okay, never mind. Yeah. We have enough on that. Under CSG 41. I rescind my, moving on. Okay. How much of these funds have been spent in FY 23 thus far? And do you expect to spend all of the funds by the end of the fiscal year? This is on Program Direction and Oversight on the workload study.
But we haven't committed the funds. Well, let me rephrase that. We are currently in the final stages of procurement. We're working with OCP to make an award over the next few weeks and expect to fully use those funds by the end of the fiscal year and complete the study by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so it's enough, but it's just enough.
Yes.
Okay. Under CSG 41, Activity 20A, Trials, Appeals, and Justice Management, there's an increase of about $54,000. What additional contracts and services will be covered by this additional funding?
Is this for fiscal year 24 or 23?
24.
Lachelle?
Yes, good afternoon. That will cover additional temporary services.
Sorry, which services? I'm sorry, LaShawn.
Temporary services.
Temps. Okay.
Yes.
And that's for backlog?
Yes.
Yes.
Under CSG 70, $15,000 is swept from the IT hardware acquisitions. What's the purpose of these funds in the FY 23 approved budget?
So those funds were to maintain some of our IT contracts and just purchase IT supplies.
And do you no longer need to make those purchases?
I think we can forego those purchases for now. They won't impact our day-to-day operations.
Can you explain why they're not being replenished in 24?
So I'll have to get back to you on that. I thought we did ask for that replenishment in 24 as an enhancement.
Oh, okay. In the agency's FY 24 attachment 1, responding to the common budget office questions, I see a contract with E7 strategies for $243,663 for temporary staffing support services. Can you provide a little more detail about what services will be provided by E7 strategies under the contract?
Yes, that's our new temporary agency that we just signed a contract with. So they'll be providing temporary staff to assist with the backlog.
So what is the temporary staffing strategy? How does it work?
Do you mean what activities will they be working on while they're here, or?
Yeah, and like, how does it fit in overall with the strategy for getting through the backlog? And I mean, while we're here, because we've identified some funds today that could be reallocated. I mean, how does that work alongside potentially bringing in more FTEs?
The temporary staff work on data entry primarily. So the new cases that come in that are filed from our licensing and enforcement agencies need to be entered into our case management system. Data entry is one of the things that we're behind on. So they're focused on first training on that. And then in addition, processing the cases in order to make sure that we're adjudicating them and processing them as quickly as possible. So it's mostly data entry. And it's also customer support, service support.
Still really blows my mind that you have to manually enter that.
We're working on trying to eliminate that as we go forward.
Yeah, I know. Okay. When should the committee expect to receive the staffing benchmark study?
We anticipate having it done by the end of the fiscal year. The report, the finalized report, I'm not sure how long after the initial report comes out and we have a chance to review it, will be released. So I don't know the exact answer to your question, but we do expect to have the study itself completed by the end of the fiscal year.
We set a goal.
You really want me to? I think a lot of it's going to depend on the procurement process. So we have to finalize our procurement process, and depending on which vendor we work with, we'll know better what the timing is, whether they'll be able to do it earlier than the end of the fiscal year or whether it's going to be right at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, yeah, I got that part. But how much time do you think you're going to need with it before you can make it public? I guess is more the question. Like, are we setting a goal for the end of the calendar year? Do we think we can be more aggressive than that? What are you thinking?
I would say the first quarter of FY24 would be a good goal for us.
All right. It's got to be sooner. It's got to be soon enough for it to be actionable by council budget season. So Q1 is cutting it very close. So I'm saying here Q1 is cutting it very close. So I'd love to see better than that.
Right. So we'll aim for September 30th, no later than October 15th.
We shall meet again to discuss this, no doubt. All right, so that's all I have for you today. You are free to go. But I want to thank you very much for your testimony. I know we got really into the weeds here, but I'm trying to figure out if we can help you guys out with the budget pressures. So we need to know what's where, and we'll follow up on that one item that we were going back and forth on. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time today.
Same. Thank you. I'm going to do a little closing statement. You don't have to stick around for it.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
This concludes today's budget oversight hearing. If you've not yet submitted written testimony, please do so by emailing it to publicworks@dccouncil.gov. The record for this hearing will close at 5:30 p.m. on April 18th, 2023. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone the Committee on Public Works and Operations will be holding one more budget oversight hearing tomorrow on the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs, and Mayor's Office of Religious Affairs, and Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Affairs. The hearing will be available for live streaming at brianneknadeau.com/live. The time is now 2:14 and the hearing is adjourned. Thank you.